Hello, welcome. Welcome again to Goddess Wisdom, my channel. After the first video that I did, where I was me within myself and within my current experiences, we're showing the parallels, like the correlation between um, relationship with a narcissist versus a cult, and sort of the sometimes sadistic. Um, Practices that can again go between the two, the mind games, all of the different parts of the relationship. Um, but as you gain a certain perspective, right, you start to pull back even further, giving a little bit greater distance so that you're able to see um, things from even a greater perspective or another perspective or a more developed perspective. Um, so I pulled back to what was going on right before I entered this, what I believe to be an inner group of the Rastafarian religion, which turned out to be basically a cult under the guise of Rasta that were sort of pulling in all these fans and women in and putting them through a brainwash sort of mind-bending process to allow them to enter this community if it's successful, in order to basically have a handler and be, at different levels, let's say, of having facility with your own mind and stuff like that. So yeah, so that was a sort of interesting place to, because I knew that starting this channel, Goddess Wisdom, was going to be um sort of, what the wisdom is that I've gained. So yeah, this was a I think so. Again, you're pulling back a little bit more because again, it's perspective, right? Um, so I I migrated to America when I was 12 years old. So I lived in Jamaica, grew up in Jamaica with my family, which is my mom, my grandmother, aunts and uncles in like a big communal like yard. And then we moved to an even like shickier area when I was maybe 5 or 6. But we still owned like sort of this larger property that we rented in another area. Um, so in the summer, since I was like, because when I was 8, I got my green card. Um, so before that, like I would go up for the summers to be with my family there. A lot of times my dad was traveling, so I didn't necessarily see him. But I had family in Connecticut, I had family in New York, so I would go up and be with them. So I'd been traveling and traveling, like going by myself with the air hostess or whatever, since I was, I guess, like 5 or 6. And then by the time I was 8, I had my green card. And then at like 11 or 12, I'm now living in America. Going up to the States one summer as usual, because I would go up every summer. And that summer, they held me at the airport saying that was something with my green card. So the family decided that I should just stay in America that year. So I stayed. So no one from school, because I was in prep school. No, I'd left prep school. I was at Immaculate Conception High School. Um, I'd skipped the 6th grade and gotten into Immaculate from the 5th grade. And now, yeah, now I'm in America. Um, wow. Long Island, middle school, Colorado, middle school, uh, Connecticut, first year of high school, New York, Brooklyn Tech High School while living in Queens. Um, then I'm in Plantation, Florida with my family there. And then, so I was kind of like, I saw it kind of like after as like hot potato, like, this family member would have me for a while, and then this family member, and then this family member. that's sort of how it happened, after we moved back from Colorado, back east. So yeah, I I met Steven when I was still in my teens. I don't I wasn't yeah, I was still in my teens when I met Steven. We didn't start going out immediately, but yeah, I wanted to at that time to meet sort of this um handsome black man who was intellectually inclined yet creative. Um, and I even asked him to have like quirks, and I think I was writing this down, but I was also like just, feeling that vibe. Like that's what I because I'd gone to these schools and been in these environments where mostly I wasn't really around like Jamaicans or even sometimes African Americans. And sometimes when I was in schools with African Americans and stuff, which is like Colorado or in Long Island or even in Connecticut, I found that because of how I spoke and because I like to read books and I didn't hide it, because I was coming from Jamaica and spoke proper English, so to them it didn't sound like I was speaking normal, like I was trying to sound differently than I was supposed to sound. But that really was how I spoke. Like in the house in Jamaica, while I was in school and stuff, while I was in prep school and that first year of high school, we weren't able to talk patois in the house. Like even if I was on the phone with one of my friends or something, you weren't able to talk patois. It had to be proper English. So I was kind of used to speaking proper English all the time, even if I was like home. So going to America, I continued that. So it kind of isolated me and made people who were just the people who were friendlier to me or the people who were seemed more relatable or whatever were, so anyway, so I'm here. I'm in New York. Um, I meet Steven, and in a way, because it was sort of exactly what I had asked for. You understand? I wanted to. His father's African American. His mom is like this radical Jewish woman. Grew up in New York. I went to Brooklyn Tech while living in Queens Village. He went to Stuyvesant, which is the Manhattan, um, version of it. Grew up in Chelsea, um, and by like a single mom though, mostly. Um, so so we for some reason we just really like bonded and quickly too. Because he like played the saxophone. He was this corporate attorney. He, he again, he went to the high school that was like the corollary to mine in a way. Um, he sort of fit the qualities and what you would call like, so it's like kind of handsome and, just tall and athletic. And we were athletic together. We enjoyed a lot of the same things. Um, So meeting Steven was like great. And I worked on Fifth Avenue at the corner of 16th Street. He lived on 16th Street between 6th and 7th. So we like our paths crossed one day, I think, at Barnes and Noble in Union Square. Um, yeah, and months after that, I'm living on Park Avenue South between 20th and 24th, 254 Park Avenue South, something like that, on the eighth floor with roommates. And yeah, and I run into him again. And we start this this almost 10 year or around 10 year thing. But again, I was still in my teens when I met Stephen. But Stephen, he had become an engineer and decided that, that wasn't for him and decided to go back to school. So he went to law school, went to the law school, as they call it, him and his Harvard buddies or whatever. So in Manhattan, in that sort of, place, from I was like I mean, I remember celebrating my 21st birthday when you're supposed to be able to actually go to lounges, whatever, with him and his friends and like Harvard buddies and their wives and stuff like that. Like his ex was like an art historian, so we were always like running into her and it was so very, it was very civilized and actually super sophisticated in the way that they raised the child that they have, the one child. And Kiki was like, I guess 12 or 13, so um and had her on the weekends or every other weekend if she chose to. She could, do it, all, each weekend or not. Um yeah, so we were like just living this full sort of existence in New York, and I'm like a traveler. And when I have an idea to do something or go somewhere, once I have the ticket money, I'll do the ticket money for both of us, and he'll deal with the hotel. Because with the hotel, you might put the food on the hotel and put other things on there. So there was more shifting going on. So a lot of times I would deal with the tickets, and then he would deal with whatever was more um modulate between different, amounts or whatever. Um, So yeah, so traveling was a normal thing for us. And because I was living on Park Avenue and 20th, and he's on 16th and between 6th and 7th, we were just right in each other's zone. We're just right there. And even though we lived so close to each other, I always kept my apartment because I just liked having my apartment. I liked having my base, even though I had roommates and stuff. And Union Square was just an amazing sort of area and environment. The farmers market is there. It's just, an active sort of cool environment, especially the little park and stuff. And they had something called Belmont Lounge, which was right there at 15th Street, Union Square East. So I'd bike over there in the summers because we were bikers. We bike up to Central Park, go up to Lincoln Center, jazz in the park. We would go to Tavern on the Green on Monday night, salsa. They had salsa in the park, at Tavern on the Green. We were just like on a Tuesday, we would go sometimes, a lot of times to Village Vanguard on a Sunday where that's like totally jazz. Village Vanguard. And then like on a Sunday, we would like almost always go to Zinc Bar, which was like Latin jazz and samba um, and then drum and bass was a part of our life. So it was like jazz and drum and bass. We find these drum and bass things going on, in the East Village or the Lower East Side or sometimes in Williamsburg. And so it was just like this active New York, Manhattan, going to the Hamptons and going to friends' houses in Sag Harbor or doing like Martha's Vineyard for the summer. Um, just, different travels. Like we went to Hong Kong. We were in Hong Kong for almost a month because he was working for a hedge fund, and that hedge fund was sending him, and I think maybe four of the wives, about four of us, or five of us, me and four others, went on the trip as well. Hong Kong and Taipei. So, so it wasn't just our personal travels, Europe and stuff like that, but we were just this active, engaged sort of couple. And so I initially wasn't thinking about children and all of that. And when I did get pregnant, it was a big deal. It was maybe 2.5 years into the relationship, and there was question because he didn't want to um, start a family without being at the same financial place where he was when he started his family before. And then he had been at Deutsche Bank and was like, head of their derivatives department and had like this whole team. And this team was then, bought over by Credit Suisse or something like that, or Morgan's, no, yeah, Credit Suisse. And so that they could do the same derivatives type, set up the same kind of structure there. So he was like in a different place in his career. almost, because you're looking at a Harvard educated corporate attorney, tall, handsome, black man in the corporate environment in Wall Street. And he's raised by, his sort of like Caucasian or whatever mother. So he's not really viewing the world, let's say, in the same way. Not that he has to, but he's not. Not that it's a judgment. It's just that's he wasn't. So he sort of saw himself as almost like a Woody Allen. Like you had to almost remind him that he's taller than a lot of the other people around him. So he has to kind of, sometimes, watch the body la his the distance between it was like, there's certain subtleties that I started to have to help him with, which allowed actual stuff to happen outside of the contract work that he kept getting over and over because we found, or I started to see that at his level there aren't that many positions necessarily, and a lot of times he was like overqualified for something that came up even if it was in his like the annual salary and like bonus and stuff like that. So contract work kept being what came up. And after I lost the child, I just decided that, like this is not for me. New York is weird. I don't want to go back to Jamaica when I can't enjoy it. I want to start up something there. So I thought of this franchise, which would be called What's the Scoop, which was like a juice bar slash ice cream where you can get your frozen drinks, frozen fruit drinks, as well as like frozen coffees and cappuccinos, that kind of thing, as well as regular ice cream, and maybe we would have another snack or something like that. But we were kind of focused on it being like cold food and that kind of thing because you're in a warm environment. So, and then I could have it like franchise in different tourist areas and stuff. And so I had this trailer, like a U-Haul type thing that you put on the back of the car that can hold two of these kiosks that we bought because I wasn't so familiar with the Caribbean to understand that people would like make stuff like that in some way or some design there. I went online and we shopped around to look at the right situations, and then we got the U-Haul thing that you can put on the back of the car and the harness for it and the tramp and all of the stuff that was necessary. Um, and like industrial freezers, all the stuff that because I decided that I wanted to leave New York. I didn't even ask Steven. In fact, the how I ended up moving in is that because he had always sort of been asking like why are we paying to rent kind of thing, um because his brother owned the apartment that he was in. um so and but he wasn't, yeah, but his brother owned the apartment. So um he I decided that okay, I'm gonna move in, but it's like in preparation for my move to the Caribbean because I need to leave this environment and start something there so that I can travel the world and sort of have something that is accruing wealth, basically. And something that's sort of cool for the environment and all of that kind of stuff. So that was the idea to do this franchise and stuff. And you know, I found that in not really speaking to him about whether he was going, I we were living together now, although we had basically been living together for almost 3 years, and finally 3 years in, basically I'm living there officially because I gave up my apartment. And that's when I started to hear, like a couple months before I'm supposed to leave, I'm starting to hear him talking about it to his friends around that we are leaving for Jamaica, that we are, we. And that's when he came in, and we got other stuff, as far as for the juice bar slash, for the franchise. So it was never even like, I was necessarily even thinking that he was going to be leaving his corporate gig because the one thing when you're like this corporate type of person and this intellectual and sort of have this network around you that's sort of that. Um, Stephen defined himself with Wall Street. Stephen defined himself in that Wall Street family. Like, even though we could have had something super successful, he wasn't he wasn't yet seeing himself as an entrepreneur or the starter of an empire or the beginner of his own, monopoly, or you know what I mean? Like, he was a part of a team, in a way he was a kingmaker, and I am a kingmaker, it's because you can't be a part of somebody's team and always uplifting them and realize that you're sort of being shifted around, this environment because you're sort of this really intellectual, handsome man, and you sort of have to navigate around how you're being perceived socially and in the because he's the one, they have to come to him sometimes for certain deals to go through, for certain he has to sign off on it and stuff like that. So people are constantly coming to him for things to happen. He's sometimes he's the one who's gonna make something happen or not. So how long are you going to be in that position where somebody else is going to decide, whether or not you stay on, like, because, it was no time for you to do something yourself. And but I didn't know that that existed until it was happening. So I was already kind of pulling him up, like, like this is how it is to be there, sort of this. So we were representing in a way in all of these environments, but I was sort of having to uplift his own confidence in a way to see who he, not his con, but just to be able to see himself. Like, if he was to stop seeing himself as like a Woody Allen type of person and start seeing that who he is and how he's being perceived based on how what it is like when he walks into a room, and stuff like that. Or and then after when we walk into a room, so um yeah, I wanted I wanted children. And even when I'd gotten pregnant, he was so much about his career and it being where he wanted it to be, and him having back an apartment and his own, and having back a vehicle and having back the finances the way he wanted it. And then year after year was going by, and then I'm like 26, and I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to think the way that I wasn't thinking when I was 19 and 20 and all that was ages. And then when he came to Jamaica, we bonded there because every ailment he had, every back problem, every carpal tunnel syndrome, everything was just gone. Jamaica was like purifying. Um, Although the juice bar, Ella ended up being a juice bar more than a franchise because once we got to the wharf with all our stuff shipped, they started to want like a percentage of what they thought that we were going to make over like a 5-year period because we were bringing in commercial stuff. So then me as a returning resident citizen or with returning resident status, because I'm an American resident, but having a Jamaican passport, I can get returning resident status here, and still keep like a dual residency or whatever. So but they were dealing with my stuff as commercial and all this stuff, and we started realizing that we were supposed to be paying people off, and then we started paying off the wrong people. So our stuff was just, the major stuff was held at the wharf for years. So we started the business. We started it in the grill and had a successful business going there, like the yoga center. Like we were the only people on the beach with Devon House ice cream, and we had like the juice bar. And then when spring break came, instead of ginseng, or as well as ginseng, or our wheat germ or whatever you might want in the natural juices or the fruit juices or the iced cappuccinos and stuff. We also like started to have it as a daiquiri. We made a new menu, called it a daiquiri station. So a lot of the juice bases that we had, we created daiquiris from them. So then the spring breakers were, would just chill there because we had like Blue Lagoon, which was like a pina colada type um it was just like, we shifted a little as we saw sort of shifts in the people that were littering the beach. And we were there for about 2 years before Stephen got offered a super, super, super wonderful position. He was like, "How come when I was on the plantation, I wasn't getting these kind of offers?" And like 2 years in, um, not that wasn't the main thing also. And I mean that happened. But we had started to have issues with the person that we were renting our juice bar on the property because we're right on the beach and living upstairs in one of the apartments on the same property. Um, so the apparently the land the man saw the business that we had going and decided that he was because he had like a regular bar. We didn't serve beer and stuff like that, although we had the daiquiris. He had like a bar and stuff, and so he put up a sign now that he has a juice bar. So now people were coming to this place and not knowing where to go or which juice bar it was, and all this kind of confusion. And then sort of the culmination to that was that his wife or woman or whatever, children's mother, did not know how much we were paying him a month. So when she came to collect the rent once and we gave it to her right next to him, we I didn't realize that what so then she saw and it was like this big thing and we just ended up leaving and we accepted what was on the table, and it was great. We were they told us what the guaranteed it was a hedge fund that he had started to do some consulting work for from Negril, and yeah, and we they he got a signing on bonus, so we were able to get back to New York. We had rented out the apartment, so we were able to have like a corporate sort of apartment until our apartment freed up. Um, and they let us know what the year-end bonus was going to be, and everything. It was a great situation. So we came back to New York, with him with working with this hedge fund and stuff like that, and yet, Stephen decided that the one child that he had, if it wasn't going to be in that place, and when it was, rising to that, it was just yeah, it was not happening the way that I thought it would. Yeah. So um I started to travel more on my own. I went to Turkey. I was in Turkey for like 3 months. I was supposed to be in Turkey for 2 weeks. Ended up being there for 3 months. A friend of mine, Sana is an artist. I met her because I'm living in Chelsea, First Union Square, and then Chelsea. I'm always in that area. So I'm going to art gallery stuff. We're going to museum openings. We're going to restaurant openings. We're, going to his Harvard Club stuff and like his alumni type stuff and stuff that's going on in the city. Um, we're just we're city people. Um, and